Thank you, Christopher. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for the introduction. We're always happy to come here. It's either one of my colleagues or myself who've been here almost all the years, because we believe it's an important forum to spread and explain and present what we as a European Commission want to do to further procurement in member states, to make it more professional, to make it help growth, and many other things. Christopher mentioned that we are moving away from a sort of budgetary, I suppose, idea and purely legal idea of procurement. That's perfectly correct. We've done that for a few years. We believe procurement is a strategic tool for administrations to further growth, to further quality of public services, and to enhance accountability and transparency of public administrations. I think that's quite a lot. And in the next sort of good half hour, I want to become slightly more specific on how we intend to do that and why we actually think that's important. Why do you all deal with public procurement? You can say, oh, well, I stumbled across it, and then my boss told me I'm supposed to do that. And I'm a lawyer, and there was a job free for public procurement. But in the end, we should have more than that. A bit it's that. We don't want that. We don't want that budgets run over that projects run over budget. I suppose you've all seen that picture or a similar picture. Fortunately, it's not in the EU. Unfortunately, it can happen in the EU as it can happen everywhere else. And we believe that running over budget, running over time, changing the design halfway through, because, by the way, we didn't plan that perfectly well, is not what we should do. And we see it's also not what we should do for the people who actually suffer in case that goes seriously wrong. So what do we want to do to help that all doesn't happen and that we have a real professional, successful procurement? The Commission has indeed adopted a package of procurement proposals more than measures in October last year. It's got 4 different areas. First, a general strategy on procurement. Second, a recommendation on the professionalisation of public procurement officials, professionals, lawyers, practitioners. Third, at the time, a draft guidance on procurement of innovation, which will very soon be adopted and not be a draft anymore. And the introduction of a voluntary ex-ante mechanism for large infrastructure projects. I will take them all in turn to explain a bit more what we mean by that. By the way, I love questions and discussions, but I would suggest we have them at the end after the presentation. Unless an itch, you have to scratch an itch immediately, then put up your hand and ask me. First, the strategy. The strategy is called Making Public Procurement Work in and for Europe. And that's exactly what we mean. It's got to work. It's not sufficient to put out rules that we believe work better than the previous ones, that we believe give the opening to all that, and then to say, well, we are not interested anymore what comes out of it. And therefore, we have identified 6 priorities on which we want to work. First, we want to really put on the agenda of all member states that public procurement is a strategic tool and not an administrative activity only. It's also that, of course. Second, and again here I will take them all in turn, so we are still slightly in the introduction. Second, we can only use public procurement as a strategic tool if we have the professionals, the buyers, who know how to do that. So we need to professionalize you and your colleagues and the colleagues who come after you. Third, we want to ensure better access for procurement. Christopher mentioned the SMEs. SMEs are a major concern for us. But it's also access internationally. And fourth, transparency still continues to be a big issue, especially also in the country we are in right now, but I'll come back to that. Also, the data collection, the data availability is far from what we believe would be useful to actually allow to use procurement as a strategic tool, first priority. The same is true for the digital transformation. It's happening. It takes a time. It takes a bit less time in some countries, but overall, it takes quite a lot of time. Here we want to help. And we also want to help in public buyers cooperating together. We don't only want to call it aggregated procurement, joint procurement, central purchasing, but I come to that when I come to that sixth priority. First, let's look at procurement as a strategic tool. On the left of the screen, you have why we believe it's a strategic tool. Because it's furthering public investment. Because, well, when done well, it ensures better public services. When done well, it limits the risks that already during the execution phase of the public contract, the bridge collapses and kills 6 people under it. When it's done well, you will have a train or bus that runs energy neutral, that runs on electricity, or that is able to integrate its schedules in a way that the bus comes when you need it, and not when you've just left and comes again an hour and a half later. We believe that that's particularly important in some priority sectors on which we as a Commission want to focus our policy. But that doesn't mean that you, in your member states, that's what you have to focus on. We believe particularly important is the health sector. We all know how important public health is for all of us. We all know that quite a few health services are struggling for various reasons. And we do have made quite a bit of research and have started to act with member states where we have seen that in the public health sector there is lots that can be done better and at lower prices. So the idea is not to make it cheaper and to race to the bottom. But if a country like Germany officially procures in a year as many CT scanners as Denmark, there's something wrong. Either the public health service in Germany is abysmal, which it is not, or people buy them just like that from the previous provider, or what else? We have our doubts that there is a particularly good reason for the fact that all of a sudden there is much less of these, it's an example, but of these devices open to competition in Germany than there is in Denmark and in other countries. We do believe if you put it up to competition, you will be able to buy the newest, the most innovative product if you do that right. But I come back to that. Another priority sector for us is IT. Many public authorities are sort of tied in almost lifelong IT contracts and never know how to get out of it. We believe there is a huge possibility and necessity for public policymakers to explain, to give room to reopening that competition sensibly. That's the side of procurement should be, in our opinion, a strategic tool. We do not lose from sight that it's also something for the public purse, reducing the costs of the public purse. But that's exactly what we mean by a strategic tool. It's use our money better to save money to do more with it, not just to do it cheaper. So that brings us to the three things we often call strategic procurement: the green, the social, and the innovation. I come back to the innovation separately, because it's a separate pillar of the strategy. But also in the green and in the social field, we believe much more can be done, that our public purchases are sustainable, socially sustainable, environmentally friendly. Just to give you one example here is the Dutch administration for waterwegen, for sort of dikes and canals and all this kind of thing, has a very elaborate green procurement strategy. The first thing is they normally always buy on functional specifications. They say, I want this dike covering not to produce more sound than that, not to be biodegradable ones, whatever. I'm really not an expert. By time X. That's the minimum I want. But you can offer me more. I don't know whether there is something greener on the market than what I bought last time, because I'm not the professional of this kind of thing. So tell me what you can offer. That already, for them, opened up the market substantially. The second thing is then, they give more points when awarding a contract to the ones that are greener. You obviously have to define that before. But there you have another chance to get those at the forefront of that kind of innovation to the table and become a contractor. That's the kind of thing we want to enhance, we want to push, we want to help contracting authorities to do. And for them to be able to do that, we believe they have to be professional. I mean, you're all here because you are professional, you want to become, at least you're interested in doing your job right. That probably does not apply to everybody. Also, not everybody is given the chance to do that. If you work in a smaller municipality that has to renovate its kindergarten, and you've never done procurement in your life, but all of a sudden you have a rather big, because it's a rather bigger town, lots of kids, you have a rather bigger project on your hands. So, I've never done that. How do I do that? It's obvious that you won't do the best job you can do. And for example, that's one of the areas where Germany, again, has recognized that it has the most to do. That's one of the areas where they say, yeah, we have so many people who do procurement without doing that often enough. We actually need to do something about it. And what we have done is issue a rather short recommendation, which focuses on three main issues: general strategy, people-focused, and tools that people need. And with that, there's a book which has lots of good practices of member states having already done something like that. To give you but very, very few examples, because the next speaker is going to tell you all about the professionalization efforts that are done in one of the member states, I suppose. We've done a lot on that. They have, and we want, for example, going to the strategy, France has developed a general strategy on procurement professionalization. It's not an initiative there and an initiative there. They have created a social network for procurers, but I won't say anything more about that. We are developing a European competency framework for the people side of that, so that public procurers, also member states, can inspire themselves from that. Other member states have done the same. Scotland has a competency framework, for example, other parts of member states. The Austrian central purchasing body has a public procurement academy at different stages. Sure, but it's all integrated. They teach similar things. So that people who do procurement in Austria most likely have gone through the same kind of training and have the same understanding of what they do. Poland has teamed up with universities to create masters in procurement in a sort of integrated approach together with the administrations. Other countries have done little until now, but recognize that it's important. And then you will still have people who know more, who know less, who have more or less experience. If we give everybody easy-to-use tools, that's going to make their life easier. There it ties in with e-procurement, transparency and data, so I come back to that. But there is another example. In the Netherlands, for example, they have a very well-developed National Competence Center for Procurement called Piano, and 50,000 people or 50,000 hits on their website every month. That's quite a lot. It's not a huge country. So at least 50,000 times in a month somebody has a need to find something out about procurement. That shows how huge the demand for this kind of thing is. And we would like to help member states to go further on that. If only by putting it out there as an important point and thereby helping those who also find it an important point in member states to say, by the way, we do that together with others. We are not alone in thinking that's important. Better access. I mean, better access is a lot. Making procurement more attractive to procurers has a lot of aspects. We have focused on three. One is SMEs. It is indeed for us one of the big preoccupations that SMEs win about 46% of contracts. Doesn't sound so bad. But unfortunately, their share in the economy is much bigger, or fortunately, it's much bigger. But then, our goal is to slowly enhance the participation of SMEs so that it matches their participation in the real economy. We believe that some of the other actions on green, I talked about, on innovation, I will still talk about, will have an impact on SMEs being able to participate more because they often are more able to propose those specific solutions. But we do believe more is needed. On member state side, on our side, we have launched a pilot project financing consultants to create consortia of SMEs more often. Because SMEs have three possibilities to participate in a procurement, basically. The worst is their subcontractors. Because then they are dangling at the string of a big contractor, of his payment schedules, of his insolvency. Big case of a huge contractor in the UK having gone bankrupt not so long ago, leaving a string of SMEs behind. So not really the solution we want. Second possibility, they go it alone. That's difficult in terms of size often. Not that easy. Third thing, they do it together. They form a consortium where they are together responsible for the execution of the contract, and they are direct contractors of the public authority. We believe in many cases that's the future we should help creating. So we are running a pilot project on how to build those consortia successfully. And some of the consortia have been created. It's a rather small pilot. We have been giving grants to 4 also consortia who are developing ways of doing that best. and we are awaiting the results will be presented at the end of the year. What in the medium evaluation, when we talked to them recently, they said one of the big issues they are facing is that SMEs, at least, are rarely interested to go across a border. And since it's an EU-funded project, the consortium building has to have a cross-border aspect. But if you do that in your member states, that's not what it needs. You can still have initiatives of creating specified people who are brokers of these consortia. For us, at the cross-border aspect, that stays difficult for SMEs. They think contracts they can have are sold to the best friend anyway, and even more so when they don't know the people who are the public procurers. And they don't perfectly speak the respective language and the legal rules. But within member states, that should not be a hurdle. Remedies. It does not sound really like an access issue, the fact that I can complain. But we strongly believe it is. If you do not think your procurement will be run correctly, and if it's not, you can complain, well, why bother? That's part of that SME thing. Oh, I don't know, and in the neighboring community, I know the mayor, and the mayor always gives the contract to X, Y, or Z. You don't have to go across borders. Well, then you don't go. You do not participate. And if then, in addition, you cannot complain that that happens, you participate even less. So for us, it's also, we believe in the remedy system. We believe in the system of individual possibilities of tenderers to complain about procurement. We've seen it works. We've seen it has also helped improve public procurement systems in many member states. So that in member states where the remedy systems are wobbling because it takes long, because the independence is so-so, we try to work with them to improve it. We also try to work with them to improve their perception by the public, not as another hurdle to get things done, but as a chance to get things done right. And then the international. The international is an issue for us. You will always read in newspapers, this contract has been won by a foreign contractor. Isn't that outrageous? This morning I had the rather funny sensation of reading that the British blue passports, instead of the European red ones, will most likely not be printed by a British firm, but by a Franco-Dutch firm. As an official of the European Commission, I think that's wonderful. The politicians think it's perverse. How can that be possible? That's not won by a local a company that ensures all the security and creates jobs around me. That cannot be correct. But the British firm has been rather silent. But the same British firm will be at the forefront when they don't win the contract in the US. They will say, how is that possible? They are closing their borders to me competing, and I am having the best offer. So they're speaking out of both sides of their mouths. And we try to help them on the international front. We try to help open markets in third countries. And for that, we have made a proposal. There we are in a legislative proposal. So we're not talking soft law. We have made a proposal by which we hope to bring third countries to our negotiating table to open up their markets. For me, that sounded a bit like a no-brainer when I first got to it. Turns out it's not. You have those who say, oh, but I'm not interested in opening the third markets. I am, and there they are consistent, interested in closing my own, the European market. Better even the national one. But at least the European one. Then we say, well, that's not really what we want. We'd rather want a fair, level playing field, reciprocity access to both of our markets. And we can't say we want to sell trains to China, but we don't want under no circumstances to buy Chinese trains. A bit difficult. Not perfectly credible. Then you have the other side who says, no. I mean, I'm strong. I can go and get whatever contract I want in China, Japan, the US, Canada. I don't need help from you guys in Brussels to open up that market. And if you try to open that market, you sort of might be able to impose some penalties or sanctions on those who don't open their markets. That's going to hurt my business prospects. So don't touch. So that's where we are. We try to open up markets internationally, but we have a very wide range of national opinions, of political opinions, and here as a Commission we haven't got very far in helping. Transparency, also a sort of no-brainer, we think. The very basic thing stays publication. The very basic thing is not completely acquired everywhere. It's not current practice everywhere. For us, we have a competence above the European thresholds. But we believe transparency is also important below the European thresholds. We cannot do legislation there, we don't plan to, but we want to be in contact with member states, telling them, be transparent about your procurement. Give people a chance for green, for social, for innovation, for better, for cheaper, for growth. If you just talk to your best friend, that's a very tiny idea of furthering economics. That's not going to work. And there, some member states are very far. Almost every single procurement is visible. From very low thresholds, everybody can compete. Whether they then do or don't is another question. It's opening an opportunity. Not more, not less. Other countries are much less far. And here we often even have a divide, what we still call the new member states. Not that new anymore. But I still talk about the new German Länder, and that's even less new. So they often are, on the face of it, better in transparency. They had no system for publishing before, so now they publish just across the board. While this country here, publishing anything below the threshold, by law it should all be found through one single portal. Try doing that. Not that easy, if at all possible. And for us, that's the basis. The second basis is to collect meaningful data about what you have procured and how you have done that and who are your contractors. We can only help SMEs if we really know where they have difficulties. Otherwise, could be that reason, could be another reason. Very, very difficult to find out. We commission studies, and they all come back to us, yeah, but the data are not there. How can you make useful policy when you don't know what you're talking about? So for fact-based procurement and procurement policy, we need better data. respecting all the rules on confidentiality. But we also believe we are all citizens. Actually, we all have a right to know how our taxes are spent. It's all interesting for all of us, whether we pay the local plumber double the regular price just because he is the local plumber and not the one from the neighboring village, with whom I've also been in school. Not to speak about the Portuguese plumber or the Polish plumber. But even within a member state, if I don't know, I cannot hold my politicians, my local representatives accountable. And that's a problem in very many, if not to say most, member states. We hope to convince them that they need that if they want to make public procurement a strategic tool. We try to convince them it's part of trust in public administrations. And that's what we are working on. We try to convince them. There will be no other legal obligation than the legal obligation for e-procurement, which is part of the digital transformation. It's slow. It's got to be completely implemented by mid-October this year. We already know now that not all 28 member states will get there. Although the directives that oblige them to do that have been proposed at the end of 2011, have been negotiated all through 2012 and 13, have been adopted in 2014, 2 years for compliance of the law, and another 2 years for e-procurement. That's quite a long time. And they still don't manage e-procurement, some of them. Although e-procurement is such a wonderful tool. It creates transparency, it collects data, it makes procedures, and that's the most important for the outcome. It makes them easier. It's much easier for somebody to go on a website, to be able to put in an offer online, than to have to pay attention that it really arrives at the contracting authority before 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. And I think the criticism we had at the beginning, oh, but there are so many smaller contractors who don't know how to use a computer. I think that's a bit, well, you judge for yourself how convincing that argument still is. Because it's got tangible benefits to get into e-procurement. Where we know there are more offers, there are better services, it gets cheaper. Nonetheless, some of our friends, still need quite a lot of support to make it happen correctly. And there we do a lot with member states. We also had European financing for introduction of e-procurement systems, etc. And it's got to go on. Cooperation, keep that short. As I already said, cooperation is, for us, cooperation is key. If you have every single municipality doing all their thing all on their own, you will never create a professional workforce and you will never reap all the benefits you can. And cooperation does not mean one big central purchasing authority, somewhere far away from the needs of local people, that will then all of a sudden decide what you buy, which paper you buy, as if you cared so much where the paper comes from you, but still. It's also about municipalities just getting together to get more professional, more efficient, and more flexible. Again, one good example before I move on. In the Netherlands, there are several public companies which put together several municipalities and their procurement expertise. And that also means technical expertise, expertise on energy efficiency, expertise on the different sectors they buy stuff in, market knowledge, procedural knowledge, implementation knowledge of the contracts. And they work wonderfully well. And they are an initiative of the municipalities themselves. It's a bottom-up thing. It's not a big central purchasing body imposed on municipalities. It's a cooperative structure. And I think many more could do that. It would also help them in the procurement of innovation. I chose the circles there to say, well, that's innovative. It's a bit different. And you're a bit bored of hexagons. So here we have a circle. We have put out to consultation at the end of last year a guidance document which tries to address several aspects, I would never say all, of procurement of innovation that member states and contracting authorities should take into account if they want to procure more innovatively. And we have put it out for consultation, we have received relatively many contributions on substance, lengthy contributions. We are at the moment integrating them into the document. But two important things already. An overwhelming majority of respondents said, it's a good thing to do that guidance. Sounds good. Second, the issues you mention in that guidance, which I quickly mentioned, are the right ones. That's what we need guidance on. That's what you should elaborate on. And so we continue to work with this backwind from those we consulted, from the stakeholders. And we believe it has two main aspects, which I've here put as opportunities and better services. The opportunities are, how do I attract what I would like to call innovators? How do I attract the companies who have innovative products to offer? And the second, how do I procure their products? It's different. The first thing is mainly SME related. Many innovative companies are small companies until they're bought off by the big ones. But we want to help them as long as they're still small. So what do we have to do to make that happen? And there the measures are the same than for SMEs. Pay attention that you don't require 10 years of experience. Obviously, if you want to buy innovation, that won't help. Pay attention that you don't require a turnover over many years, which is too high. That's one of the reasons it's capped by law now. Yes, I know, public administrations are risk averse, but then don't complain if you buy something old. So pay attention not to require something they can't bring, because they're new and innovative. And actually, pay attention to payment. That's in all our consultations, they always come back, the public buyer doesn't pay well. The public buyer pays really at the latest possible moment, and even then. So that's something we should work on. Think how far you can seriously consider prepayment without too many risks. That's this side. The other side is, how do I buy innovation? And I've mentioned some of it, what we want to foster. Think about how you draft. First, very simple thing. How you draft your tender specifications. Do I really have to define in detail? Or can I just say, I want that in this hospital, the temperature of the rooms where the patients are in never goes above 23 degrees and never below 19. Please give me the concept, the technical concept that does that. A Polish hospital has done that. They didn't end up with a sophisticated climatization. They ended up with something very simple, sunshades outside, coupled then with heating. But if you had defined, oh, I need a climatization that does this and this and this, and it's got to be above, and it's got to be not the one with cold water, but the one with, well, no wonder that you don't get innovation. Innovation can be something simple. Innovation does not have to be technically sophisticated. So that's the first thing. Think about quality and not lowest price. Define your quality criteria so that you can choose better quality. And that would already do a lot. Then there are the procedures, the clear procedures that can help innovation. But we believe they are second to first use the normal opportunities. You can use negotiated procedures with competition. So you advertise that you're going to negotiate. Transparency. But then negotiate. You have the possibility of the competitive dialogue when it gets really complicated. So we're not talking sunshades, where you invite the competitors and develop the solution together with them. When it gets even more innovative, does not exist at all, then you have the possibility of innovation partnerships, where you first have the research and then you can buy the product. But it doesn't come the other way around. Oh, I want to buy something more innovative. I have to use an innovation partnership. Oh, that's complicated. No. You can use it within just normal procurement, if you know how. And that's also something we want to foster to member states. And then, in the package, we had one very concrete proposal to which I'll devote my last 4 minutes. And there's another bridge. And this bridge was already in the presentation before the Florida one collapsed. This didn't collapse, but it's perfectly useless. I don't even know whether it's the result of a procurement gone wrong, or only the result of bad architectural planning. But I mean, somebody made a contract and somebody had that thing built, and for quite a lot of money. So there is also a problem in the procurement, in any case. And I don't really believe it's only because there's no money left all of a sudden or whatever. I mean, then you wouldn't have started in the first place building the bridge. So we think that in these large infrastructure projects, procurement things go wrong. They're not always that tangible, but then they don't make for good pictures. So that's why we have adopted a communication called the Voluntary Ex-Ante Assessment Mechanism for Large Infrastructure Projects. Please complain to me about the name. If I had known that it would have such a long life and make itself into the official communication, I'd never have devised it. Although it says what it's supposed to do, so that's an advantage, but still. So the first thing it says, it's voluntary. That's already good. Member states are not obliged to give anything to the Commission. We offer, and what it means is we offer member states and contracting authorities who want it help with the procurement of their large infrastructure projects. That ties into what Christopher said at the beginning, and I took up. Procurement is also about growth. Procurement is about good public services. So we fund a lot of public investments in the Juncker Fund, in the FC, but then we've got to spend it. And that's what the ex-ante mechanism is there to help. We are only there to help on procurement aspects. There are lots of other advisory services in the Commission who help with other parts, with the financing, with contract execution, with environmental impact assessment. We have our niche, the procurement. And it's there that on the conference where we presented it, the drawing person drew this little nice help desk person. So the first thing is, contracting authorities or promoters of these big projects can contact a help desk with their specific procurement questions. You would be astonished how even promoters of big projects have simple questions on procurement. We have one of the biggest transnational railway projects in Europe, where they had rather, I wouldn't say basic, but normal questions on how do we manage conflicts of interest. What can we actually do in our consortium agreement to manage that? We are several railway companies together, plus the administrations, plus a body above it. How do we make sure that some of them still can bid but don't get into a conflict of interest? Do we have to exclude them all? That's where we could help, for example. We do not replace whoever of you is a lawyer in private practice. We don't want to put you out of business, quite the contrary. But we do want to give the European Commission side of what we believe is the right interpretation of our European rules. It's also not about national rules. And therefore we also give companies the possibility, promoters, to notify the project, to say, here, that's my procurement plan. I want to go it this way. I want to have a big framework contract. I want to award a concession, and these are the main conditions or whatever. Do you think there's any problem with EU procurement law and the design of that big project? Because that gives them some kind of reassurance. I'm saying that a bit carefully. We do not replace the European Court of Justice. But as an administration, once we've said we think that works, quite a lot has to happen that we ourselves afterwards say, no, that's patently illegal. And we have complaints on big infrastructure projects, and we obviously have to look into them. When we have looked into them before, it's more likely that we keep the same line afterwards, and that can help. Because when you have a project on ice for quite a time until we finally make up our mind what we want to do, and if we want to go to infringement, then you have to wait another 3 years until we are at the end of the process, at least. Not good for that bridge. Not good for the transnational railway project. So that's why we want to help. The third pillar is developing a knowledge-sharing mechanism. That's part of the professionalization efforts. Also astonishing when we develop that thing, that they rarely speak to each other. The CEO of the Fehmarn Belt and the Brenner Brothers Tunnel and the Rail Baltica Railway and all this. You would think they have a body of knowledge together, but often they have the same questions all over again. So if we can help them exchange that information easily, we believe that can help future projects. And that's up and running. That's a specific deliverable of all this political strategy, to help growth, to help transparency, to help better infrastructure projects on time. And the whole thing, I come to an end, is a partnership. We believe in the Commission being the partner of the Member States. We offer a partnership on innovation, on investment, on social. We offer the ex ante. And we hope that Member States take us up on that. We also hope they push us on it when we sort of well, yeah, well, now we have, unfortunately, we now have other priorities. So we really want to work together to make procurement more strategic. Thank you very much.